Hey, yo, what is going on, you guys? Got a brand new video for you guys today. We're going to be doing something a little bit different. Today, we're going over the entire brand new Spider-Verse season. Of course, these are going over the data mines for the brand new season starting next Tuesday. So some of these items might be subject to change, but we're going to go into it like they're pretty much going to say remotely similar, because more often than not, they do say pretty much the same going into the new season. And honestly, I am super pumped for this new season. I feel like we're getting a lot new little toys to like mess around with here, as well as maybe not so great items. That's why we're going to be breaking them down. I'm going to give you rankings, whether they're flexible, whether they're super competitive, or I think they're going to be adjusted, as well as my rankings for all the Series 5 and the Series 4 cards themselves. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. So starting off first and foremost, these are going to be all of the dates for the Series 5 data mine cards. This is how they look currently through the data mines from snap.fan. Of course, we are starting off with Spider-Punk being this season pass card. We have Man-Spider as the super premium season pass card slash Series 5 release card. We have Superior Spider-Man the same week as the Spider-Punk, and the Man-Spider being the Series 5 card of the week. Next, we're going to have Ezekiel Sims on the 11th of November as the second week Series 5 card. Then we have Spiderman Noir the week after that, the third week Series 5 card. And we finally have the Prowler as the fourth week Series 5 card. Of course, all of these cards, besides Spider-Punk is the only card that will not be available in the seasonal Series 5 spotlights or Series 5 packs. They're not spotlights anymore, but the seasonal Series 5 packs, all those cards besides Spider-Punk will be available in those packs. Now, the first card we have to talk about is going to be the good old Spider-Punk here. Spider-Punk is a 3-cost, 2-powered seasonal pass card with the ability you can move this once, meaning you can move this once like a Nightcrawler, like a Jeff, and when this moves to a location, whenever it moves, it does not limit it to one turn. It is whenever this moves. If you have other ways to move this around and stuff too, steal 2 power from the highest powered enemy there. It is a targeted steal, which is really nice, and like I said, it is not limited to just a single turn for this interaction. So this thing can get kind of a bit crazy, you would think, right? And stealing essentially is a 4-power play because you're adding 2 power onto Spider-Punk, and then you're removing 2 power from your enemy's card there as well. Next, of course, here are the ratings. I think it is a fairly flexible card. Of course, it is a 3-cost card, and you know the 3-cost card slot is kind of very competitive itself. But I do think this card itself is super competitive, even in that 3-cost card slot. I feel like this has the ability to be in a larger variety of different move decks. It's not like just specifically narrow to, you know, Torch, Ghost Spider kind of move. I think it's going to be kind of separate from that, but you might use Ghost Spider with this card. And I think this is one of the main reasons they changed Madam Web, that Madam Web doesn't take away that free move you get from that Nightcrawler or from the Jeff as it used to. Now it is counted as a Madam Web move if you move that card off that lane, opposed to counting it as a total move for the card itself, which is very nice. I think they wanted to be able to sell this card, so that makes sense. I'm thinking of even like Zorn stuff. I'm thinking of Hercules stuff, potentially too, if you wanted to do Hercules stuff. But more like a Zorn, Madam Web. You know, you have Ghost Spider. You also have potentially, you know, the Grapple Arrow from Kate Bishop. Like, you have a bunch of options, I think, with this card, which kind of like elevates the competitiveness. And because it steals, like, the whole entire mitigation being a targeted steal, I think is really nice. It could potentially get adjusted maybe if it's too powerful, or if it's not powerful enough, maybe they buff it or something too, because, you know, the season pass cards that aren't performing that well, they normally buff like we saw with Zombie Scarlet Witch. So just kind of keeping that in mind when it comes to this card. Next, of course, we're going to have Man-Spider, like I said, is the super premium season pass card or a Series 5 card. If you do not want to buy the super premium season pass, you can just get it as the Series 5 card, opening the seasonal Series 5 snap pack itself there, which this card is also very interesting. It has the ability, on reveal, merge the last card you played into this, and when this merges, double its power. So that's 2 different sentences there. So the last card you played, the Man-Spider merges with that card, and then it doubles, right? But if you also just merge cards with Man-Spider, this card does double. So just kind of like keep that in mind. Like, you could play a Hulkbuster, you could play a Chimichanga, you could play a Agony onto the Man-Spider. Whenever this card merges with anything, it doubles. Also, if you do something like a Zola interaction, Zola, of course, would make the Man Spider go over to another lane, and then after the Zola has finished making a Man Spider, the Man Spider more often will then merge with the Zola once Zola has finished its action, because then you have essentially played that card after Man Spider was kind of like played, or, you know, it's because it procs the on reveal again, it'll merge with one of those cards. Kind of think like a Strange Supreme kind of thing in a sense. So very, very interesting stuff there. But this card, I don't know. I think this card looks a little funky, guys. I won't lie. I think flexibility-wise, there'll be a couple, you know, niche kind of merge decks with this, which, you know, it makes sense, you know, for this to be with a merge kind of deck, a hand buff maybe style thing. It doesn't have to merge with an on reveal before, or have to merge with like a Hulkbuster or with an Agony and stuff. So you have at least that going for you. It doesn't merge with a specifically like on reveal ongoing kind of thing. It just merges with the last card you played. So like that can get some good power. But I don't necessarily know how super competitive this card's going to be, kind of like as well too. I mean, it can scale vertically, but I'm still seeing a lot more of, you know, Shadow King, some more Shang-Chi going around. Like, it's just weird. I mean, it has to have a card played before it to be able to merge. That's what I'm thinking. Like, if this card isn't also performing as well, maybe they buff this one, too. I don't know. Zombie Scarlet Witch, you know, like Esme, and looking at, like, Captain Carter, some of those main cards that, like, when I think about Season Pass cards, I mean, this is a super premium Season Pass card that like get adjusted. I think of kind of like those style cards, so I wouldn't be surprised maybe if this happens to this card potentially in the future as well. But next we have a long-awaited card for a lot of people, including myself. We do have the Superior Spider-Man, which this card is kind of crazy, right? This card has the ability at the start of each turn, you get +1 energy if you have any cards with increased power in play. So it does not stack, like playing a card onto Hope Summers gives you +1 energy, you know, for the amount of cards you played onto Hope Summers, or like an honor reveal like Psylocke going on like a Camertage, giving you the extra energy there. This is just, I think, a flat +1 energy if you play cards with increased power here, which I think is pretty crazy. So like Angela, Athena. I don't think it works with Kitty Pryde, because Kitty Pryde bounces back into your hand before the whole start of turn things happen. But I could be wrong. I could totally be wrong. Maybe it does work with Kitty Pryde. But this seems like a pretty easy quota to kind of meet for a ramp card, which I think is really nice. Which is why I think it's fairly flexible at the 3-cost slot if you're really just trying to do any ramp, just trying to have like just buffs onto cards, which is not too hard to get a buff onto a card. It's harder to get buffs on like specific cards sometimes, but like in general, any kind of little buff onto some of these cards. It doesn't have to be on turn 3. You could get the extra energy later in the game. Like most of these like rampers anyways, when it comes to like a Hope Summers, like an Electro, you get that more going into turn 4. Or potentially even later, like you with Hope Summers, it's more towards like turn 5 when you're actually getting the extra energy, because you have to play cards onto Hope Summers on like turn 3, unless you have like a Wasp or something, or a specific like location or something to help there. But I think this is going to be a very solid card. Fairly flexible. I think it's going to be competitive. I think this is going to be a card that is played quite a bit when it comes to the season, and it's the first week of the season. I think this is definitely within the first week of the season. A lot of people are probably going to be playing this and playing Spider-Punk opposed to some of these other cards here. And then I don't know if it necessarily could just... If it's too good, maybe they make it a 3/3, or they make it a little bit more expensive, but I don't really see that happening for this card. Next, we have Ezekiel Sims, which this card is very interesting, okay? We have the ability, after you play a card here with higher power, so higher power than Ezekiel, give this +2 power, okay? It gets the +2 first, and then move this to another location. So, if your opponent plays a Mercury onto your Ezekiel Sims lane, Ezekiel still gets the +2 for you playing a card with higher power here. It just does not move. So it gets the +2 first, because that's the way I believe the sentence is ordered. That should be how it works. It gets the +2 first. And then, if it doesn't have Mercury there, then it'll move to another location. So, this is also not limited to once per turn. So, hypothetically, you could hit this card a couple times with cards that are higher power, and this card could scale kind of crazily. For a 2-cost, I think this is pretty solid there. Do you use this instead of Silk, or do you use this with Silk? Do you use this instead of Batroc? So you get a bunch of options. Of course, you can't target it as much as Batroc, or do you use it with Batroc? Like, I feel like there's a lot of layers and things to like really kind of think about when it comes to this card specifically. That's why I think it's a little bit flexible in those kind of small ball kind of packages of move itself. Going from a 2-2 to a 2-4 to a 2-6. Of course, you have to play a card then now after that more than 6 power. But then it goes to a 2-8. You play a card with more than 8 power, it goes to a 2-10. Like, there's so many just different opportunities, I think, with this card, which makes it helpful. And being able to move it around so your opponent has to mitigate where is Ezekiel going to land kind of situation seems pretty good. And it's whenever you play a card. When you play a card. It's not if your opponent plays a card like Silk. When you play the card. So you get to tell this card when to move, okay? You get to tell. Your opponent doesn't get to tell, like with Silk, when this card gets to move. But I think this card is fairly competitive. I think like in the 2-cost slot, going to a 2-4, pretty good. 2-6, great. 2-8, amazing. So like, there's so many just different options that are really like with this card when it comes to that, like fundamentally, which is like flexibility-wise. I think it's fairly flexible. Not the most flexible as some of these other cards. But I think you have a bunch of different ways you can mess around with this. It doesn't have to be a move deck. I think if you just want a 2-cost scaler, you can use this as one of those 2-cost scalers. Which I think is really nice, which is why I don't think it'll necessarily get adjusted unless it also, like I said, it falls flat. They can adjust some of these, seasonal Series 5 cards because, they're in snap packs and that people have more access to them than they did in the Spotlight system. So there's a world where maybe they could adjust it, but I don't know. I think this card seems pretty good, and I don't think they'll need to adjust it as is. Next, we have Spiderman Noir, which this card is one of the first cards we've had like this, okay? On reveal, if your other cards in play, so not Spiderman Noir, cost exactly 8 total, at the top card of your deck here, set its power to 8. We also have this in parentheses 0 out of 8, which is, I'm hoping, is a factor to let you know in your hand, if you have Spiderman Noir in hand, what the cost of the cards you have on the board is. And it'll fill up that meter, kind of like how you would like with an ongoing card, or like how Firelord, is glowing when you have a 3-cost card in your destroy pile. I feel like this is a check system for your Spiderman Noir to be able to see if you actually have cards on the board that you allow you to be able to play this Spiderman Noir out. This card is like so cool in concept, but I'm afraid that it's probably going to fall flat. It honestly could be one of the least flexible cards of the season with the narrow quota you have to hit in order to get this to work. Of course, there's Mysterios. There's a bunch of, maybe you can play Shanna and have a bunch of 1-drops on the board and stuff to get this to work. But it just feels like it's just too much. I mean, it's cool to be able to get potentially one of these cards to come out of your deck. Like, not targeted deck thinning, but it's deck thinning, and it has 8 power to start. Like, that's cool. But I just think it's going to be a little either too slow, or you're not going to be able to play too optimally with this card, which I think is pretty rough here. That's why, like, competitive-wise, yes, it's cool to get one of these cards potentially out at 8 power. If something like an Iron Man goes to 8 power, that's amazing. We play Iron Man potentially in Conchu decks sometimes, to get that as, like, a potential high roll. But I just don't think logistically that this is all going to be too cool for such a cool card. I mean, all too good. It'll be cool, but all too good for such a cool card itself. So I wouldn't be surprised if they potentially changed this one as well. Buffing it, making it maybe count itself. I mean, actually counting itself might be a little bit too much. But maybe buffing its base power or something, because, like, I don't know. I wouldn't see it as a 3-cost. They change it in some way, maybe, to make it just feel more playable. But we'll see what happens after this card release, see if it, like, falls flat or something, too. That's how I feel about some of these cards. Some of these cards, I'm like, yo, they're freaking amazing. So, like, these cards are going to go crazy. Oh, my goodness, they're broken. Like, the Prowler. The Prowler here is the Series 5 card. This is the last card releasing this season with the ability, on reveal, add 2 Thieves' Tools to your hand. Set their cost to 0 if a card moved last turn, which we're playing pretty much in a move season. This is a Spider-Verse card, so it has synergy with move. And these Thieves' Tools, oh my word. So we have the Remote Mines here, which is a 1-cost Thieves' Tool. So like they're 1-cost tools, and if you move a card, they cost 0. And they're all on reveal abilities, but Remote Minds here. On reveal, afflict the 2 highest power enemy cards here. 2 highest powered enemy cards here with -2 power. Vibro Shock Gauntlets. On reveal, give your highest powered card here, +2 power. And then you also get +1 energy next turn. So you buff a card and you get extra energy the next turn. And then we have Flight Harness, okay? On reveal, give your highest power card here, +1 power, and move it to the right. These just look crazy. And they can essentially cost 0 if a card was moved last turn. They're all on reveal. Like, I'm thinking for just, like, regular move stuff. I'm thinking for werewolf stuff. Like, this is actually insane. Like, I think this is fairly flexible, too. Yes, it's a 3-cost slot like a lot of these cards, so it may not be, you know, super competitive in the 3-cost slot, but I think the Thieves tools just look crazy good. Competitive-wise, those tools, their abilities are really solid. Of course, you know, you don't have to, I mean, you have to move a card from them to cost 0, but one of them already procs a move, so you could use the other one potentially freely. So you have that as an option, or you're playing this in, like, a move deck itself, so you're already moving stuff around. You're playing Werewolf, so you're moving Werewolf around. Like, there's so many different things you can do here. It works with Spider-Punk. Like, this just looks insane. Like, legitimately just looks insane. All these abilities on the on reveals look crazy. This card has a pretty good base power, too, at a 3/4 for what it's able to do. Like, if this card is too good, I wouldn't be surprised if it gets adjusted. That's why I do have this a little bit higher on the adjusted scale. I would think that if they were to adjust it, they would probably adjust maybe Remote Minds only hits 1 card, and then maybe Vibro Shock Gauntlets only gives +1 power. There's just so many different ways I think they could go if this card is too good. But in general, I think this card looks freaking incredible, which is why when we go over to our rankings over here for the season, we do have Spiderman Noir in last place. I just feel like the abilities either are too slow, it's a little bit too niche, too narrow. So I don't necessarily think this is going to be anything too crazy. I mean, if it is, like, that's cool. It's cool that this such a cool character has like that kind of like zest for the season, but I think it's going to be one of the worst cards of the season. Next, we're going to have Man Spider. I think this also is a little bit too kind of not as combo heavy as Spiderman Noir, but I think it's still like you're kind of taking power away from another lane. Of course, you're doubling that with Man Spider, and you're kind of really just trying to, I'm winning this lane. Either I'm like winning this like crazy now, or I'm just literally Shadow King Shang-Chi bait. Is kind of like my thought process there with Man Spider. Next, we're going to have Ezekiel in 4th, but like this is not like it's in 4th place, this card's not good. I still think this card's going to be good. It's a 2-cost scaler that can really scale well, and it doesn't have to move to get the +2. I think that makes this card very valuable. It's just the other cards in front of it are just better. I have Superior Spider-Man at 3, of course, getting the extra energy every single turn. Or not every single turn, but at the start of each turn, having just a card buffed is really strong, and I think that's why I think this is in my 3rd place spot. I do have Spider-Punk in 2nd because you can move this multiple times. Of course, it only gets 1 free move itself, but being able to afflict multiple enemy cards in the course of a game and targeting the highest powered one, I think is very solid with this. But I do think the Prowler is going to be taking the cake here. I think the Prowler is going to be the best card this season. These Thieves tools just look legitimately insane. Would not be surprised if this card does perform too well. It does get adjusted, or that this card just performs incredibly well, which is why they have it as the latest releasing card this season. Like, it's going to be so good. But now we're going to move on to the Series 4 cards. So here are what this Series 4 cards look like for the Spider-Verse season. Of course, we do have Web Sling. Web Sling is Dynamite to release on November 4th alongside Man Spider, Superior Spider-Man, and Spider-Punk. So we have 4 cards releasing on the first week. Then on the second week, we do have the Chameleon releasing at the same time as good old Ezekiel Sims. So we'll have that as another card there. And then we do have 2 potential limited time mode cards. We have Deafening Chord as a skill as well, like Web Sling is a skill, and then we also have Hydra Man. Both of these are Datamine Series 4 limited time mode cards. So we'll see if that's how it stands, but per Datamines, that is what they're listed as, so that's what we have listed as in the video. But let's talk about Web Sling first. Web Sling, like I said, is that Series 4 skill with the ability on reveal. Next turn, you can move one of your cards away from here. So a card that does not take up board space after it's played, that is kind of like another Madam Web for your cards, is really, really cool. Probably really, really strong too. Using this as a potential another out, using this against potentially some of these clog decks, using it to like literally to anti-clog yourself, or just move things around. Of course, it is targeted to one card. Like, you can only move one card. It can be any of the one cards in that lane. Of course, and it's a web sling. It works with the Spider-Verse cards because, you know, you're swinging around. So it makes sense. Like, this is a really, really cool skill. And I think it is crazy competitive. I wonder what this takes in the slot of a lot of these move decks. I don't think it takes the Aranya slot. I don't think it takes the Ghost Spider slot. I don't think it takes a Madam Web slot. But maybe it takes away, like, a Cloak slot, or maybe not like a Hellion in like that other style move deck. Like, I wonder, do you not run Craven? Like, it's just going to be interesting to see what exactly this swaps. You know, I'm just theory crafting here. Like, I'm not saying this is exactly what's going to happen kind of thing, but it's going to be very interesting to see what this does swap with, because I think this is going to be a potential key opponent or components of these new style move decks, because we're going to have some crazy move decks going forward. That's why I think it's also fairly flexible. It doesn't have to be just move. It could be just for your Spider-Punk as well. Allowing your Spider-Punk to move again is really solid. Working also with the Prowler, so you can have those skills cost 0 for another turn. Also using this potentially to get werewolf value, move cards away to mitigate your power elsewhere. Like, this is just going to be pretty strong, and I think it's going to be very competitive. It's a 1 cost. It's a 1 cost move card that doesn't take up board space. Like, that just sounds great, you know? Which is like why I was raving about the Prowler and everything too. So I wouldn't be surprised if this card's just freaking crazy. But next we got the Chameleon here. This card in concepts, it looks cool. You know, it looks cool. It's another just in the competitive 3-cost slot, which I think is like one of the biggest issues with this. With the ability, on reveal, copy the text of another card here that you revealed this turn. So you do have to play this onto the same lane you played another card. So it is spending a good bit of your energy just to do this singular play here. So it's like kind of something interesting to keep in mind. Like, I don't know. I think this card in concept looks awesome, and I like the card art and stuff. But it's like, am I really going to be playing this 3-cost card with another card? Like, potentially just adding 2 cards to a lane that maybe I have a 3rd card there already. Kind of just like, I only have 1 board space left. And like, board space already is kind of like tricky in this game. And I feel like the cards also have to be on the board. So I don't think this will look at like a skill you just played. If this looks at skills you played on the same turn, that would be really cool if the Chameleon can copy that, but I don't think so. I think these cards have to be on the board. Otherwise, if it can copy skills, I think that would make this really solid. But I don't know. I feel pretty low about this. I think competitive-wise, I mean, like, it gives you a competitive like niche. Like, it can be pretty strong, you know, copying like something like a really good combo piece for you. That can be really cool to be able to, you know, copy the text into the card. I wonder if it also looks at revealed and unrevealed cards. So if it looks at unrevealed cards, that's actually, if it is played before a skill, because it says copy the text of another card you revealed this turn, the card has to be revealed. Never mind. The way it reads, I was about to say, if it copies unrevealed cards, that would be cool, because then you could play it with skills and get the value of the skills and stuff. But it does not do that. That would have been really cool. That would have made me feel better about this card. But I think, like, it does have some competitiveness to it. Like, it could copy, like I said, combo cards, which can work really well for you with this. But in general, I don't think it's the most flexible. I wouldn't be surprised if this one especially falls flat, and they're like, you know what? We've made a couple duds this season. Let's change some things up. Of course, there won't be an OTA for like something like this for like 2 weeks afterwards, because it comes out the 11th. We have an OTA on the 8th. We wouldn't have another OTA till like the 22nd. So this would be a hot minute for this card if it just doesn't perform well for it to go that way. This also, like, the card art here kind of reminds me of like Cobra from G.I. Joe. A little bit for Chameleon, which I think looks pretty cool. And I do like all these Creative House Pocket variants too. They did an incredible job. But Not super high on this card, if I'm being honest. But these one-cost skills this season, oh my goodness, they are all legitimately crazy. So next, of course, we have Deafening Chord here. On reveal, afflict an enemy character here that cost 3 or less, so it is targeted 3 or less. You afflict it with -1 power, and you remove its text. So you got a mini red guardian targeted for 3 cost or less, and also afflicts with -1 power and removes a card's text. A 1-cost card does not take up the board space for you because it's a skill. Yeah, I think pretty good. I think it's fairly flexible. Like I say, 1-cost tech card, right? A 1-cost tech skill. Which, like, I think that's also really strong. I mean, is just Werewolf getting a lot of value? Like, Werewolf value this season, move in general value, but it's an on reveal, move affliction kind of stuff. Maybe Werewolf affliction comes back or something. Like, this looks just crazy, right? Removing the text of a 3 cost or lower. Like, just removing text on a card is great. Of course, like I said, it has to be 3 costs or lower, and it looks at the base 3 costs. Like, it even, like, location changes and, like, you know, stuff like that. Like, it doesn't offset, like, a 4-cost card like I hit by Zabu. It does not hit that because it looks at the base cost because it's lowercase c. So Deafening Chord is still just, like, I think very competitive. Like, I mean, I say competitive for, like, a lot of these, but this card's a 1-cost tech, you know, skill. Like, this is crazy. I think it's fairly competitive. I think, like, being able to remove text in the card, afflicting it with negative, you know, power as well, like being targeted, I think that makes it strong too. I don't necessarily think this would be adjusted unless it also falls flat. Maybe they make it a target more than 3 costs, maybe. But I don't think so. I think it's too good as is for even something like that to be even remotely close to be thought about here. But this looks good. I think this generally is, like, a very solid and a very strong card for this next season. And then next we have Hydra-Man, another limited time mode. Also, like, we have the Chord as a data mine limited time event, limited time mode card. So we'll see what happens here, what events and modes we might have coming this next season. But we got Hydra-Man, which is a 5-cost, 8-power card. So it's, like, the same power and cost as Sandman. But on reveal, set the cost of each deck's top card to 1. So you're giving your opponent also a card that costs 1. Unless you run Mobius. If you run Mobius, then, you know, their card does not cost 1 because their cards can't be reduced in cost. But it's cool that it's, like, the inverse of Sandman, because, you know, Sandman makes your cards all cost 1 more until the end of the next turn. So you have them now, the top card of each deck is 1 cost. Like, I think that's pretty cool play on words there. But I'm not entirely sure how I feel about this card. I think competitive-wise, like, there's definitely an advantage of being able to play some of your cool cards, like, or some of your combo cards for 1 cost, instead of their full cost, especially if you're playing, like, a more expensive kind of deck, like a Tribunal or, like, just a super combo-heavy deck. But this warrants you kind of, like, having to play Mobius because you're also giving your opponents potentially an advantage of their card being able to cost 1. There's a world also where you could play Hydra-Man in a ramp-style deck, and you play Hydra-Man and then you Korg right afterwards to shuffle their deck so they don't necessarily get their card that just cost 1 after you had played the on reveal onto Hydra-Man. So that's definitely something you could potentially mess around with in order to use that instead of, like, a Mobius to be able to kind of, like, mitigate your opponent being able to get the extra value, which honestly is not a bad idea. But I don't think this card is honestly super flexible. I think it's kind of going to be narrow into, like, that Mobius style deck you're really messing around with. Maybe you use this in a ramp. You ramp this out early to maybe get one of your bigger cards to be better on, like, a turn 5 after, like, an Electro or, like, a Blink. I don't know. I think it's weird. I can't wait to see what people build for this card, though. I think this will be fun. Like, it's a cool, like, Pixie kind of card maybe too. To get value for, like, Pixie things, like, especially you're already running Mobius in those style decks, but just, like, to really make sure, like, you can get some, like, extra value from it. So maybe you wouldn't be surprised if this also, you know, gets adjusted. Maybe they buff this, they buff Sandman. Maybe they affect them both the same week. Hydra-Man comes out, they buff Sandman because it's a Spider-Verse season. You know, they're buffing all the Spider cards in general. But yeah, I don't know. This card looks interesting. I'm just not super high on it. Which is why when we go to the ratings over here for all the Series 4/limited time cards, I do have Hydra Man in last place. I don't know. Opposed to some of these other, like, opposed to at least two of these other Series 4 cards that look legitimately crazy, I'm like, Hydra Man, I mean, it's cool, but it's, like, a little too combo heavy. And, like, you kind of need to have this play done. You need to have this play done. Like, you have to have the Mobius. You got to be able to offset maybe your opponent's shuffle to get the Hydra Man things. It just feels like just not as great as some of these other Series 4 cards. Then we have Chameleon here. Chameleon, the 3-cost slot is just so freaking competitive as is. You have to play it onto the same lane you played another card this turn, and the card has to be revealed in order for Chameleon to copy its text. It would be better if it could copy skills or it can copy unrevealed cards, but I don't know if that'll happen with this, so we'll see how that goes. It just, even if it was a little bit different, I don't know if it's better than, like, Deafening Chord is a 1-cost skill that afflicts power and removes the text of a card. Of course, it's 3 costs or less. That just seems kind of ridiculously strong. There's a world where maybe this is actually number 1 and Web Sling is number 2, but I think Web Sling, just the move in general, and all the different enablers we have for move right now, I think Web Sling being able to move cards across the board, not also taking up the board space there, I think is really, really strong to be able to have that kind of surprise factor, or for your opponent, what card are they moving? How are they doing it? Like, you know, it just, Web Sling just seems incredibly good for move, for a werewolf, for anti-clog, for potentially clog, and then Deafening Chord in second, like I said, like being able to remove the text of a 3 cost or less, which honestly we're seeing a lot more of these kind of small ball kind of decks. I mean, this hitting like a Merlin seems like really good. This hitting a Ravonna, hitting a Luke Cage, hitting a Werewolf, hitting a Mobius. Like, you have so many just different 2s, 3s, and lower cards that Deafening Chord just has so much value into hitting. So, not surprised if this is number 2 or potentially even just number 1 this season. But I think Web Sling, the power you can have just everywhere across the board, and the move is so, what are they moving kind of thing, like, is just so good and gives you so much value in that sense. And I think you can also play, you know, Web Sling before you even have revealed another card, because it says, like, you can just move cards from here the next turn, which actually, if we go back and look at Web Sling itself, I do believe you can move one of your cards away from here. Like, this doesn't have to be the last card you play into a lane. This could be a card you actually play prior to, like, playing, let's say, a Human Torch, right? Like, you play that prior to playing a Human Torch and move it over, and then you can Frigga that Human Torch. I don't know. This seems pretty good if you're asking me. But yeah, that's going to be the ranking for the Series 4 cards. As we do come to a close here, I will do a full ranking of all the Series 4 and Series 5 cards for the Spider-Verse season on next week's episode of The Yap with Dance. And our special guest, Husky Puppies, will be on The Yap with us. So be on the lookout for that next Tuesday, I do believe. And as always, I want to say thank you guys so much for watching this video. This is a newer kind of style video, and I want to kind of maybe do some more of this, as well as continue to do deck guides. The deck guides aren't going anywhere, but doing some more of these news, kind of like looking over new season kind of videos as stuff, you know, progresses and everything too. But I would say, yeah, thank you guys so much for all the love and support. I really appreciate it. And if you guys did stick around to the very end, let me know down below. What are your thoughts on the Spider-Verse cards? And if I'm completely wrong, let me know. I will take the feedback. Let me know if I'm completely wrong about these cards, I'm overthinking them, or maybe they're not as good, or they're even better than what I think they are. But yeah, it's been real. God bless, and Tucker out.